All right, we're rolling. So for tomorrow, the plan was to meet with principals. I made this PowerPoint just to kind of go over the kind of our district improvement plan, what the purpose is, just kind of why we're meeting, kind of what we're gonna, our agenda, what we'll go through, then just kind of brief overview of what, I know they know, but just a purpose of what our campus improvement plans are for, how we monitor them throughout the year. It kind of goes into a little bit of, I guess, how we monitor them through data. It doesn't dive real deep, but it kind of gets into that. Then, of course, purpose for the district, and then how we monitor that, and then the shared vision that we see through our campus improvement plans, and then the district improvement plans. And then based off of all of that, I was going to have the principals start thinking, and maybe, for a follow-up meeting in the future, maybe we can get that in a few weeks, but just how we're going to take our campus improvement plan and our district improvement plans and make sure that we do professional development that is based off of those, so we can write our professional development plans and make sure that they're aligned with what our campus goals are. And then I've kind of gave it just a brief overview of why we do our professional development planning and how that should be based off of our goals there. So. And then in this, I was going to see what all do you think I need to, what parts of the district improvement plan do you think I ought to hit?
So, I mean, there's so much in this thing, but basically the table of contents and the needs assessment and all that kind of stuff, the demographics, it comes from another section of the program, and when you fill that in, it just combines it with the strategies and all that. So it puts it in a different spot all the time. So when you have a problem statement and you attach it to maybe number 1, number 2, number 3, whichever category you want to put it in, the problem statement may be around all of them. So it prints it out that way as well.
Oh, I see.
And that's how come you have all that stuff here in the front. The perceptions, the district processes and all that kind of stuff, and then you have all your priority statements, all that stuff, and then finally on page 17 you get to the goals.
Okay.
And that's really what the campuses should be looking at.
Okay.
You have your goals and your performance objectives, and then you have the strategies underneath each one of them.
Okay.
So, the district plan, of course, is 3 times bigger than your campus plans.
Yes, ma'am.
But your goals are basically the same. I mean, you should, we all want a safe school. We all want a safe environment. So those goals, we all want our STAR scores to reach a certain percentage. So those should match up. And that's where we have to kind of make sure that we have everything inside the plan. Like I have, in the district plan, strategy number 2, you have fundamental 5 instructional strategies. Well, in your campus plan, if you have like some weird other strategy, then it's not matching the district plan. So your campus strategy should match your district strategies. So if you went to, say, for instance, a professional development and they want you to use some other strategy on your campus, well, then we would need to add it here, like the elementary is going to use this strategy, the other 2 campuses this. But it's not a district initiative. It would be each campus. So it makes it harder if we're not all on the same page.
Okay.
Just stuff like that, little things,
Okay.
And then every strategy should be tied to an expenditure source.
Okay.
That's one thing that's very important. because when you do, so this falls into Edgar problems. So when you do a PO and you want to buy something, it should match what your plans say you're using it for. You just can't go out and buy a mop head for culinary arts if you're not matching it up for something that
Some reason
is required in that class.
Okay.
So the funding sources are always important because, $199 you have your local monies, but $211, $255, $263 is bilingual. So you can match up that strategy, and hopefully the federal money can pay for it instead of the general funds.
Okay.
It's just things like that are.
And that's what I've always been going to ask too. So whenever you do like put funding, are you just kind of going off of what we've done like last year's or what we've done in the past, or you're not actually?
No, if I went to every one of you and asked, hey, what do you think you're going to spend on this? Yeah, that would be great practice. But who has the time to do
it's
that?
not realistic.
So, yes, in the past you spent this much money on something.
Okay.
Now, if it's unusual, like last year, we had an unusual change in the way special ed money was spent because we lost an employee over there. And so we had to make MOE, we had to spend more general fund money to match what our sped money was being spent. So then you had to go into your general ed and spend some money, which normally, if you have the employee out of sped money, that salary, say $100,000, is very important because then, it helps when you lose that money, then you have to find other ways to spend your money. And so if you have a plan and then you start having to adjust it, that's when you come in and adjust the district plan as well.
Okay.
So we had that weird thing happen with employees. We should have went in and adjusted some of our spending thresholds in here as well. And that's just good practice. However, again, time
on everything.
and just someone just to do this job.
Yes.
But it's, you'll find that some objectives have more strategies than other.
Yes.
However, you should at least, have 2 objectives to each goal because you're usually hitting 2 things. But you always want, not just reading and math, of course, you always want to include all your other subjects so that you can spend money on like your CTE supplies or your just a plain old PE budget. We don't really budget for PE so much at the high school, but you still have the class and you still have to have funds for it. So you have to fit it in somewhere. So when you match up your PO to your objective or your strategy, especially for Edgar and federal funds, we have to do that to make sure that we match up everything.
Okay.
It's just good practice on paperwork.
Okay. How many times a year would you say do you edit it? Do you try to do everything at whenever you're rewriting it at the end, or?
No, because it'd take too much time. So, when you do the updates here, the reviews, like November, January, March, and you have some changes, and so your director, say she's talked to the principals and there's some changes that have come up. We no longer want to use CHAMPS for social emotional. We want to use some other program, and that's fine, but you would want to put it somewhere in here because that way in the next couple of months you're still using it, and then you just take it to the committee and say, hey, we had some adjustments on goal 1, objective 2. we want to add this language in there.
Okay.
And you just ask the committee if they're okay with it, and then, you know, at the beginning and the end of the month, usually the first meeting and the last meeting, I typically would ask the committee to look at all the words just to make sure we're on the same page,
Okay.
but it only has to be approved at the first,
Just at the
just the one.
Okay.
But I always like a whole lot of eyes on it,
Okay.
and it's a lot to read, so you know we kind of popcorn
Yes.
it, but that still helps us. It still helps us see all the different words on there, and what fits the high school might not fit the elementary, and so I adjust it that way. So practice. When I went through a workshop, it said that you keep your pencil copy paper for good documentation that you're changing things and you're looking at it throughout the year. And so you keep your paper copy as well as your electronic, but you keep your paper copy for good proof that you're doing it.
That you're at work.
Yeah,
on.
that you
Okay.
work on it all the time.
Okay.
So you could do it one time a year, but you'd have to remember everything.
A lot of work to
Uh-huh.
get it done once.
And then you'd have to have your meeting, you know, and then it's 2 hours versus, you know, an hour.
An hour.
It's not.
Okay. Well, anything else you think I need to do for tomorrow, or is that?
I think that's okay. One thing to for sure stress that the funding sources need to tie back to the strategy, which ties back to the objective, which ties back to the goal. You know, they all gotta flow. And of course, you know, I think it asks you when you're putting in your strategy, is this part of your RDA? And that report comes out like in last of October, November, the first, you know, the RDA report.
Oh, yes,
And that's a Fed report. So you want to make sure that all your stuff matches up with the federal stuff as well.
ma'am. Okay.
Because your funding, some of it's federal and some of it's not. And your feds, that's your highest threshold you want to be compliant with, like special ed.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we try to be compliant on the highest level, not just your local
just local.
compliance. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a whole lot easier.
Alrighty. Well, that sounds good. All right, I guess we'll get it. We going at 10 o'clock in the morning? Is that what time
Yes,
we're saying?
that'll be good.
Okay.
Y'all just come all over here.
All right, Ms. Greer. So, just on the follow-up side of the meeting we just had with the principals and stuff, I did have, I guess I had some questions. Sure, I'd like to hear your feedback too about how I did, but I think Ms. Tolliver did bring up a good question about if you're a new superintendent to a district and you come in and, you know, is the plan you have in front of you, what if that's different than your you know, maybe your vision or your ideas as a superintendent, or what would you do? Kind of the board wanted you to change your plan that kind of wasn't in line with your vision. Kind of how would you handle that maybe?
So, you know, you, as a superintendent, when you apply to places, you apply knowing their vision already and kind of what they want. And then when you go through the interview process, the idea is to mesh the person with the community. And so when they're doing all that, your vision should be similar. However, you know, we know that doesn't always happen, that you can say things that you think is going to match them, but then when you get it, the superintendent gets in the seat, then they start doing things that are not necessarily the board's vision. And that's when that superintendent may only last a year because they're not meshing. So when you have a superintendent, then an interim, then another superintendent, the board is going to be very careful about selecting their next superintendent because they already have a bad taste.
Okay.
So to match up the visions, they should have, through the interview process, not necessarily pulled out the piece of paper or whatever, but kind of do interview questions on how they're going to match with the board and the community and then the teachers and then, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's a hard thing to do. Now, if you get a superintendent, okay, they come in, they're going to follow the board's idea right now, and everything should stay in place. You're not going to take the district plan back to let them re-look at it, change it all up. That should all stay in place because it's gone before the board. The board said, yes, I like this. And it's their vision, their mission. And you have a superintendent who comes in and wants to change some things. She's gonna have to talk with the board, do some collaboration. They have a thing called, a required training called Team of 8. It's required every year, and if 8 people don't show up, then it's not legit. You have to have all 8 of you there to have it considered a Team of 8 training, because you're a team that runs the district. So the superintendent has his guidelines from the board on what to do. The board has 3 things that they can, tell the superintendent on what to do. They can't they could micromanage him, but they shouldn't, because it's not, that's why you hire a superintendent, is to do the day-to-day stuff. And so they should all work together to have the same mission and vision. And if it doesn't mesh, then there's definitely something wrong. And when they do their House Bill 3 goals, they have to get with the principals, and they have to do the STAR test. They have to look at the data, even the pre-K and kinder and first grade data. You can look at it to see if the kids are on grade level. It's just not it'll be a pre-K assessment, not so much a STAR assessment. But you can then change it, but I don't foresee it changing like majorly, because then you're gonna upset the whole apple cart. Everything's gonna change. There's no reason for that to happen unless the board changes, and the board hadn't changed in 5-6 years. So their philosophies are still the same. You get a new board member in, but that's 1 of 7. So basically you can pretty well see that they stay the same, and communities stay the same as well. I've known this community for 20 plus years, and it hadn't changed yet. And they're kind of stuck in their old ways.
That's what I was thinking. So even with this, have you ever seen, our board here, have you ever seen somebody take a plan to them and then just say no? Or even change much here and there? They usually say, hey, this is right along with.
Yeah, because even though they rule everything, the idea is to have people in place to do the things that they're supposed to do. And they are the superintendent's boss, but our boss is the superintendent. So we don't directly have them as our bosses. They can't tell us what to do. We get our instructions from the superintendent. Now they could tell the superintendent something, and then he can choose, because they don't like just instruction. They can't tell us which instruction model to use. They can suggest things to the superintendent, but ultimately it's the superintendent's decision to tell us what kind of instructional model to use. There's a fine line in little districts, because they're all involved in everything. Most of them have kids in their schools, and so they want to give their input more often than a big school district. And most superintendents listen to them because technically that's their boss.
Yep.
And they can do with the information as much as possible, but I've never seen anybody come in and boards and, I mean, this one I've been doing for over 10 years and say, nope, I don't like one thing that's in here, redo the whole thing.
Okay.
It's even before we had the program and you did it on paper and a template, there wasn't, they would ask questions, why do you do this, why do you do that? But
never to make
never
major
make
changes.
it, no. And you add it. Most of the changes that you add in it are compliance, like Senate Bill 12, you had to have something in there on dating violence, and then the safety stuff is real big, and so you had to add that in there and make sure we had safety protocols in place, the SROs, if you had a school marshal, things like that, but it's not,
Nothing major.
it's not something that you would have to like throw away and start all over. I wouldn't even know where to begin if you had to do that.
No, I was gonna say 70 pages.
That'd be terrible.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you could just have a one-on-one conversation with that particular individual and kind of explain the rules of education to them. Because school board members typically are not educators.
Yes.
They're walks of all different kinds of life, and unless you're an educator, you really need to study education to be able to understand how we do what we do.
The reason behind stuff.
Yeah, because it's a whole different world of doing things. It's not, sometimes I wish we could run it like a business, but you know, we have to take into consideration parents and kids, and we have all these obstacles in our way, and you know, TEA, you have to do certain things a certain way, and businesses, they follow their own rules, but not like we have to. That's just my opinion, so.
Okay. Anything, so one of the reasons I picked this activity was to address principals as, you know, not a, you know, an equal, but kind of just, you know, giving them, you know, a plan and something for our district base, you know, in the role of superintendent. Anything I need to work on when addressing, you know, how I address the principals or anything like that, or you got any advice for me on how, like, again, how you know, when you come in and you address us as principals, you know, anything that kind of mentality that you kind of need to have, or is it?
I find myself a little different than most superintendents. Some superintendents come in and just say what they want to say, do this, do that, do this. I try not to do that. I try to let principals have a voice before I say do this. I mean, I like to guide them just like you would as a principal, guide the teacher in making the decision that you want them to make. It's the same way with principals. I want to guide them and give them enough information that they make the same decision that I would want to make.
Yes.
Now, I don't expect principals to exactly do or think like me, no, but they have to have more of a world knowledge, not so much as your little campus.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that's practice. That's not anything but practice, because you know, I was federal first before interim soup, so federal programs have to think all three campuses and the world view as well. And you have to get everybody on board, otherwise you're more of a dictator, not a superintendent wanting everybody to be together.
Yes,
And everybody has their own ways of doing that. And you know, when you have leadership meetings and you come together, even though each campus is different, you still have important information that you can learn from each other on employees and and students and that sort of thing. Are you gonna do it differently because of the age of the kid? Sure. But there's always things to learn. For instance, you know, I had a question yesterday, can I expel a 7-year-old? You know, well, the answer's no.
Yeah.
They're too little. Have you been to your, then I start thinking, did you do your discipline training, chapter 37? Because it specifically tells you in that training, you know, what you can and what you can't do. And it's not, did you listen? See, all those questions starts coming back. And then I start saying, well, maybe we need to have a little training, an update, so that everybody remembers. And that's how some training comes into my head as well, is because of the questions that are asked throughout the year.
Okay.
And it's not, I don't try to call people out. I'm not, that's me. I'm not gonna sit around the table and say, hey, you didn't do this. I'll talk to them later and say, look, you know, we gotta fix this problem.
Yes, ma'am.
But there's no reason to call them out in front of their peers when it's degrading to me. I don't rock and roll that way, but everybody's different.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody's, you know, everybody has their own style, but I was always taught you can get more, you know, with honey than vinegar.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I try my best. Does it always work? No.
Yes, ma'am.
But I try my best so that we can all work together to have buy-in before I say, hey, do this.
Before we do it.
And it's with emails as well. Yeah, I will backspace to make sure I get the right email when I need to send a directive.
Okay.
But that's interesting in its own self.
Yes, ma'am.
Because emails are really bad.
They can be, yep.
And you have to, that's like teaching your teachers, look, don't send an email to Miss Fuquay demanding your list of expenditures.
Yeah.
I mean, ask politely when
Yeah.
you have time, can
The
you
tone
please
goes a
help
long
me?
way. Yes, ma'am.
Otherwise, you know, it becomes a problem
Yes, ma'am.
for you and the teacher.
For everybody. Yes. It turns out being all right. Well, okay. Well, I appreciate your time on this, and I guess we'll get ready for the next one. So.
Huh, sounds good.
Thank you, Ms. Bird.